Hey, it's your girl Nancy Red, and this is season 3 of Mompreneurs, where every week we celebrate beautiful Black entrepreneurs who are simultaneously amazing business moguls and awesome moms. We're listening to their life stories and inspiring advice. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes I think to myself that I just want to get away. Have you ever thought, you just need a completely fresh start, you just need to get out of here, go to this place, and start anew? That can seem impossible, and it's easier said than done, especially when you have children. But nothing was going to stop my next guest from living her best life. Not kids, not responsibilities, not even the United States of America. Amoya Shante pursued what she knew was for her. She left it all behind, traveled the world, and found herself in the process. And now she uses her experiences to help others follow in her footsteps. Welcome, Amoya. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, so before we get into your mompreneurship, let's talk about who makes you a mom, because there's a lot of people in your household.
There is a lot of people. So I have four daughters. I have a 19-year-old, almost 20-year-old, 18-year-old, 8-year-old, and 20-month-old right now. Two are still in the house, two are off on their own adventures.
And I think that's great. Out of curiosity, the 19-year-old and the 18-year-old, do you think that they look at their mom as a role model for, going on these streets and living their best life?
I do. And my 19-year-old actually decided to not return to the US and continue her journey in Mexico City. So it really inspired her to do that. Whereas my 18-year-old was the opposite and really wants the traditional life in the US college, traditional college route. And that's her journey. So it's interesting, the two kids.
I I love it.
They're
So,
living their
but
best life.
you've got they're living their best life, and I think that's one of the things that we talk about here on Mompreneurs, about being someone that our children can learn from and grow from and see, not making themselves small, not giving up on their dreams. And so one of the things that you did is pursue yourself after having all these kids. You had 3 kids. You had the quintessential life. Paint a picture of who you were in 2015.
Ooh, who I was in 2015. It's like a whole different reality from now. So I was a mom of two in 2015 and a stepmom of two and married. And I had the house and the car, and I was finishing my degree and working full time at the same time. And life was very normal, the American dream of dropping kids off at school, picking them up from school, going to work, having the degree, having the white picket fence, and I was absolutely miserable. Absolutely, undeniably miserable, and in this state of feeling like there must be more to life than this. Like, this can't, I did all the things. I got married, then we planned to have our daughter, which happened in 2016. So I was pregnant in 2015. I was just really struggling, spiritually, emotionally, everything with life at that
So
time.
even though you had all the pieces, it wasn't what you wanted. So
Mm-hmm.
then 2016 comes, your daughter is born, and something
Mm-hmm.
snaps.
Yes, it was like when my daughter was born, it was like I woke up. I woke up to the fact that I was in a very unhealthy marriage. I woke up to the fact that I was deeply unhappy, that I was feeling unfulfilled, that I was feeling like, I did all the things. This time I got married. This time I waited 6 years before we had our daughter. This time I got the degree, the house, the car. And yet I felt empty. I felt like this is not actually what I desired. This American dream is not is not for me. And I made the decision to leave my marriage and then ultimately sell all my possessions and just travel the world full time with my daughters. So that was like the big transition that happened, shortly after my daughter was born. One of my daughters was born.
Right, so you have three daughters, you have left your marriage, you have left your home, and you leave the United States. You don't even just go to an apartment around the corner. You're just like, okay, how do we
Well,
go from
yeah. So basically, what happened is I watched a YouTube video by a woman named Lainey Liberty who was talking about world schooling. And at the time that I had left my marriage and moved into this tiny condo apartment with my three girls, I really had a strong desire to homeschool because my girls were really struggling in school after leaving my marriage, moving to a different school, a little house. And we started doing these mini trips in the States. Like we went 5 hours away. We were in Austin to Corpus Christi, and we had so much joy. And we did it during the week because it was cheaper during the week than to travel on the weekend. The Airbnbs were more expensive on the weekend. And when we went on this initial trip, we just, for the first time after leaving my marriage, just felt so much joy. And then when we returned from that trip and returned to the school and returned to life, it was back to like feeling horrible pretty much. And I was trying to figure out a way, like, how can we travel more if how can we travel more if I, and have the money to do so. Travel is not the cheapest thing to do. And I was like, well, if I didn't have this condo, then I could use the money that we would be spending on accommodations, which is a fortune in Austin, Texas, to actually, go to other places around the world where the cost of living is cheaper and experience life. Like if I'm going to struggle in the US, if I'm going to struggle as a single mom, I might as well struggle living my best life traveling the world, right? Everyone's like, as a single mom, it's like, I was struggling anyways. You might as well go live your best life. And at the time, I also considered homeschooling and came across a world schooling video. And that's really what was like, world schooling, what is world schooling? And I was finding out that there were other people who were traveling full time. And instead of teaching kids out of a book, or in addition to teaching them out of a book, they were actually taking them to the volcano and taking them to the archaeological sites. And I was like, okay, this is new for me. And that's really what started the journey. It was like a little trip in the States. And then from there, we didn't take off internationally because we had to get passports. And I was going through a divorce and all this stuff. So it required special sections in my divorce decree. And so we did like a road trip across the US, and we were staying in different Airbnbs. And then we got the passports, it was, to Canada. It was like one of that. We drove to Canada, and then we started branching off into more international travel. We did Puerto Rico one time. You didn't need a passport. So different things like that before we totally left everything behind.
wow, okay, so it was a slow boil and it built
Slow
and
boil.
built and built from
Yeah.
there. What now, at what point did you become an entrepreneur?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that was a whole new world too. Because I had very little money when I was traveling. And when you do this lifestyle, you start to meet other people who are working online, and some have their own businesses. And I started with,
And this was before
how
COVID. So people need to realize that when we're looking at this, this is before COVID. This isn't when
yes,
people were doing online jobs. This wasn't like, oh,
yes,
of course you can get a remote job. You were
yes,
living a normal Texas life
yep.
trying to figure it out.
No concept of online business entrepreneur. That was not even in my awareness at the time. And I connected with a woman. How did this start? I feel like, yes, I had went to Mexico, connected with a woman in Mexico that had an online business supporting women in something. I don't even know what it was. And she had talked to me about doing something like that. And I was like, well, I really love personal development. I would really love to show people that they can create a life of freedom. And I had started a Facebook group, a big Facebook group. I don't want to say the name now because it's no more. I gave up that group that grew to like 8,000 members, all about single moms traveling the world. And then I was so afraid to have anything that cost money, especially because I only worked with single moms originally. But I started doing these like $30 workshops, right? 30-day workshops, and people were paying for them. And then over time, um, I launched a membership actually all about travel. And it was 1 month before COVID, before the pandemic hit. And it was all about single moms traveling the world. And then the pandemic hit. We lost 40% of our members, and that was my first like official business. We changed it to a community focus. It grew, and that was my business model for a couple years, was this membership site. So it's like I connected. Travel opens you up to connecting with people that are living life in a different way, doing life in a different way. And it kind of led to this idea, and I kind of fell into it. And entrepreneurship, there is no like blueprint, really. It's like I just learned by jumping in, observing others, and just failing along the way. Like the faster I could fail, the quicker we could have success in the game, right? And learn from it. And that was the beginning of my business that's transformed so much now. But that was it. It was a community. It was a community of women paying monthly to be a part of a community.
I love that. And it's interesting. It's not linear, right? Because you're here, you follow this, you start this business, it's going great, and then an act of God happens, the
Oh
pandemic,
yeah.
and you can't do anything
Yeah.
about it. So fast forward to now, 2024. How do we get from losing 40% of your membership to here? Like, what would you say part of
Yeah.
your mompreneurship right now? I like to call it the hustle hierarchy, like the things that make up the
Yeah.
bulk of your income. Where are we?
Yeah, so I started well, let me bring it back just a little bit. Living abroad in the US with this membership during the pandemic, and not living abroad in Mexico. I end up moving back to the US, and my business actually falls apart. We start losing even more members after sustaining it for years. I start driving for Uber
During
to
the
supplement.
pandemic, of course. So really quickly. So during the
Yes,
pandemic, you had a business. The pandemic
yes.
crashed the business, so you came back to America.
Yeah, well, it was that and other reasons, right? I came back to the US. One of my daughters really wanted to experience life in the US, and I had to start supplementing my income with Uber, driving for Uber, because I was in the US, expenses were higher, and the pandemic was still, we had a membership. It was doing well, but when the expense of the US came in, it wasn't doing as well as, say, living in a place with a lower cost of living. So I started supplementing, and during that journey of being back in the US for 7 months, I stumbled upon neurolinguistics programming, hypnosis, and something called QTT. And that was it was a certification program that I kind of just like bumped into these people, started learning about it, and started getting certified in. And that in a 90-day time frame in the States changed my whole life. Like I went from supplementing my income on Uber to having my first $35,000 launch on a group coaching program. So I moved into these group coaching programs. And from there, this original group coaching program has now transformed into what I do now, which is helping women attract love by becoming the love of their own life, right? By writing the greatest love story of life, by romanticizing life, by infusing their life with pleasure. And we utilize all these different tools in order to help them do that. So it was like we went from struggling business to multiple six figures, when it seemed like it was failing, right? Like when we think everything's falling apart, it's actually coming together. And entrepreneurship loves this, right? It's like, who can weather the different storms of entrepreneurship? And the trainings led me actually back to Mexico. I actually came back and met the love of my life within 30 days. And all these other kind of things came together. And now I'm helping women with that avenue, right? Learning, because when I moved back to the States, I had to really learn to find out who I was again, love myself again, figure out who I was, and go on this completely different journey than what I was doing prior,
Wait, so let me get
sort
this
of.
straight. You
Okay.
decide in the States that you're going to become
Hmm.
a love coach. But yet,
No,
no, okay, so
I
you
didn't.
decide so okay, you decide to take on a path of learning to love yourself.
Yes, learning to love myself. And I went on this healing journey with
Okay.
NLP and healing stuff that led me to falling in love with myself. And when I started actually liking who I was, everything else came together easily, like the business, the love, everything. I was like, oh, so the common denominator in all of this was really me liking me, right? First, knowing who I am. And from there, we launched a group coaching program that was actually called Freedom Life by Design. and it was about creating a life of freedom. And then it moved into something else. And just recently, in the last few months, we have switched to love. So yeah, that all happened within the last couple months too. So it's kind of been this evolution. Freedom life, it turned into money and business, and then the real passion came through with love right now, like helping women so that money becomes the byproduct of the relationship with self, right? The partner becomes the byproduct of the relationship with self. So that's where we're at now.
When you first moved to Mexico to start your business, you were starting a business when you first moved to Mexico and you hired a photographer.
Mhm.
What was that business and what was the
Mhm.
photo shoot meant to be when we're talking about promoting that business?
Oh, yeah. So when I first moved back, I had launched a group coaching program called Freedom Life by Design. And the photo shoot was a symbol to myself to just celebrate myself for creating a life of freedom. And just also, really, it was to step into this identity. I was like, if I were a six-figure business owner, what would she do? How would she would celebrate moving back to Mexico, like that was a big thing, leaving it behind to get in the US and moving to Mexico and really celebrating myself. So that was the intention. I had no idea I was meeting the love of my life, but the intention was to celebrate life, to celebrate this life that we were creating.
So how did this celebration turn into meeting the love of your life?
The photographer just happened to be the love of my life. So there was a list of photographers, like 60 of them, in a Facebook group when I was searching when I had moved back. And I zeroed in on one name. I don't know why to this day. Sent him a message. Didn't have any photos really of photographer. And I was just like, oh, this is the person. We met up, and it felt like a home that I had never known when I met him. And I didn't see it. Neither of us were like, this is my person. It was just like an easy photo shoot. Like we just connected in that way. And then it developed, we went on a date a few days later. And from then it just like developed into something completely different, right? Like, and two people that are 10 years age gap. I'm older by 10 years, different language, different culture, different everything just flowed together. And yeah, that's how it evolved. So I just met the love of my life when I showed up to the photo shoot, and he happened to be the photographer.
I love that. And it's interesting because single mompreneurship is very difficult. And I can't imagine being so difficult in another country. But yet, it actually brought you to your partnership. A lot of people think, well,
Mm-hmm.
starting a business will take too much attention away from being a family member or being looking for love. But in your case, you don't. That actually was the opposite.
Complete opposite. That's what led me to the love. If without the business, I probably would have never met him. And he is the counterpart to the business. He's the videographer, photographer, and tech person, and graphic person. So he is also who I needed in my business at that time. So he became a part of the business, right? So it was interesting. It was like it was like a completion of something that I actually needed too, besides the love and all that stuff.
So here we are, a couple years later,
Hmm.
another baby, a
Yes.
great relationship, a thriving
Yes.
business. Between then, when you were starting and you had a hopeful manifestation photo shoot, to now, what is a big milestone that you recall where you were just like, oh my gosh, this is actually working. This business is real. My
Wow.
family is being provided for.
Being able to get whatever house I wanted, being able to have a healthy relationship, being able to take off in the middle of the week for a beach or a date, being able to have team members in the business, having a chef, a nanny, a housekeeper, an assistant, all these things were these symbols when I recognized pretty early on, like, wow, we are doing it. And also doing work, like I'm doing work that I really love, and working with my dream clients and people, and seeing my babies thrive, and seeing my man be so happy in his business and his work. He's got his own separate amazing business as well, different from that's not a part of it. And just seeing all that, and seeing that we are, you know, my business is a feminine led business. It's pleasure first. It's purpose. It's not hustle. we do very little hustle. I will float in a pool all day long and then hop on the call in a bathing suit, like in a robe. Like, it is pleasure filled. We'll throw rose petals around the laptop before a meeting, whatever is going to bring pleasure and heart first, and letting the money be a byproduct. And when we made that switch, when we started focus on that, like, abundance flowed in so effortlessly into the business. So it was just like prioritizing pleasure and joy over anything else.
Talk about how being in Mexico has been a game changer for your mompreneurship. Because when you talk about these things, when you talk about the help, when you talk about the nannies, when you talk about any home you want, so much of this is because your expenses are so much lower, right, than they
Yes.
would be if you tried to do this in the States.
Yes, it would have to look very different in the States with like a meal prep service, probably over a chef, and maybe a nanny, but maybe not as many hours as we have now, right? And a house, but maybe the house wouldn't have a pool, like a nice house, but maybe it wouldn't have a pool, things like that. So being in a place where the cost of living, as far as that support, not everything is a lot less than Mexico. It's actually can be more expensive, but support and help and for your home is significantly less here, which is so important in business, right? Having that help and support. That's why moms really need to give themselves grace when they don't have that, when you don't have all the help and support. And I think that's sometimes missed. Like, people compare themselves to someone else's journey without knowing. I'm like Queens. I have a whole team of home team and people in the business as well that are helping me on this journey. So when you're a mom in business, it's like you might not have those things. So you're going to have to set aside, hours during nap time, or call in a babysitter for a little bit of help, a few hours a week, whatever you can do. But it's a process of really giving yourself grace. And living in Mexico, it's not even just the help, it's the energy here that helps you slow down and take a shorter journey in entrepreneurship, right? Like, because expenses are less, you can take more risk in your business. You can slow it down a bit. It's not a need. I'm always like, take the pressure off the business, right? Like, too much pressure on the business takes out all the fun and joy. So if I take the pressure off the business and slowly grow it in a really intentional way, it just feels better.
I love it. And then that's why you've said, like, living abroad is you specifically say that I believe living abroad is the best thing that a single mom can do. It's a game changer, in fact. And in particular, whether you're a business owner or just a single mother, there's a living and intentionally, there's less stress. There seems to be an opportunity to just take care of yourself. I mean, I laugh because you still have a very active YouTube channel, and as someone who's currently going through braces with my son, when I saw that you paid $250 for braces in Mexico,
Oh,
girl,
yeah.
I think we've paid like $7,000 at this point.
Yes.
It's a whole different
Yes,
game.
and one of my daughters, it was the same in the States. It was like $6,000. And then I came to Mexico, and for clear braces, I was able to get, which I need to actually get them again because I moved back to the States and had to get the bottom taken off. I'm like, it was $250, 600 for clear ones. It's like completely different experience. So yeah, I believe that it can be for single moms an absolute game changer, with the caveat or with the warning of, wherever you are, wherever you go, there you are, right? So the things that you struggle with in the States, that's not going to magically necessarily change when you get to Mexico. It's its own personal development journey. And there's something about Mexico in particular that teaches you to slow down, to teaches you to appreciate things outside of material possessions, because I've met some of the happiest people here who have the least amount of material possessions. And then the sense of community and doing things differently, and just being outside the US in general is such a game changer for changing your life.
So, what is your advice to others who are listening or watching, who, in the chaos of their motherhood, their situation, they want to use their unique and specific gifts to build their own brands and to build their own business?
You're going to be scared. You're going to feel like you don't know what you're doing, and do it anyways. It doesn't magically go away one day. There's no like, Oh, I've met this income goal, and all of a sudden the fear and doubt and imposter syndrome just magically disappears. So it's, you know, remembering your why behind it and letting that guide you in it, and also practicing enjoying the actual journey. There is no destination, there's no end goal, because they will always move, right? So it's like, how can I appreciate the journey now and also give myself a whole bunch of grace when you're feeling fear, when you're feeling doubt? Get yourself surrounded in communities of other people who are doing this, like mentorship in any capacity. I don't know if it's a member, you know, you could go follow their free things, but just get in the room with others, because when you put yourself in the room with others that are 10 steps, 20 steps ahead of you, you will naturally rise, right? And you will have that guide to lead you along the way. So surround yourself with it, whether it's online, in person. And when you feel the doubt and you feel the fear, because that's going to be there. It's a part of the journey. It's a part of life. Do it anyways. Fail. Do all the things.
When do you I love it. It's life is scary, and particularly with you have kids. I just need to know, what was it like when you first got to Mexico with the three kids, including a baby? I'm going to
Yeah.
assume you didn't immediately have a nanny. How did you do this? How
No.
did you travel all around with a baby and just a vision, but not everything concrete? How, because three kids in general, you can't even hold all three kids. Like you,
No. No. It was a hot mess. And I really was like, look, I'm a hot mess in the States, and I might as well be a hot mess around the world. I didn't have a nanny for years. Like when I was traveling, there was no nanny. And my other daughters, so I had a 7 month old, and my other daughters were 10 and 11. So they weren't too little, and they were able to help me as well, like a little bit, right? So luckily it wasn't three toddlers or three babies, and it was just a hot mess. There was nothing pretty about it, right? It was beautiful, but there was nothing pretty about it. It was a hot mess alert of a lot of craziness and beauty mixed in. So yeah, like I, there was no help, but I was a hot mess in the States. So I just figured I might
right.
as well go see the world. And it was scary, and it was all the things that wasn't there. People like, oh, it was scary. It was this, but I really had so many beautiful experiences. In particular, when I got to Mexico and felt like I had been lied to my whole life, because I was terrified to come to Mexico, and I came and I'm like, why are these people being so kind and nice to me? I really thought this was going to be a different experience because the news told me something different. And I felt lied to, really, truly. So, yeah.
And your daughters got to see too firsthand that fear is not something that you should let stop you. If I were interviewing them right now about their mompreneur mama, what do you think they would say about their journey with you? Because they were on they're part of your mompreneurship. They're part of everything.
Yeah. 3,000%. I think it depends on the kid. Two of them would be like, wow, like, I think they can just appreciate that they were able to live a very non traditional life, and that has shaped who they are. And for one of my daughters, she would probably tell you a mix. This was the greatest thing. She admires me. I know she loves me, and also she wanted a more traditional life. And that was like, you know, you've got half of your family who has no desire for life in the U.S. You have one child who really did, which is actually why she chose to stay behind when she was 15 and stay in the States. And it's something I honored, because I do believe kids should have a voice in the matter. And I respected her voice, and she's now going off to college in a few weeks. So yeah, I think they would say, yeah, I think they would say that it's really inspired them to live their life, whatever that looks like, live their best, their dream life. And everyone's different. There's no one way.
And she knows she doesn't like these traveling streets. The girl who
Not at
stayed
all.
in the U.S. At least she
Yeah,
she like she's like this is where I am.
not for her. Not for her. She's living
Okay,
her
I
best life
can't
in a
let you
different way.
leave. You have to participate in my favorite segment, which is called Mompreneurs Manifestation. And I think you'll like it because I always ask our guests what's next for you, what you're hoping comes next, and how listeners can help to manifest success in this endeavor for you.
It is. Life is so good right now. It's so hard for me to see, even it's so good right now. So I guess what's next is just more of this, maybe more travel. I'm living abroad, but we are really streamlining things in our business so we can go away for a month at a time. Because I really love my home too. I'm a homebody. I love my bed. I love my room. um, so just, for the business is just scaling it more, bringing in more amazing women and team members. And with our family is just spending even more time together, traveling. I don't know, life is so good for us. I am living my dream every single day. So it's I'm just like more of this, please. Let's I'm loving it.
I love it. Okay, so people can follow you and see how much you're loving it and be inspired. Tell everyone where they can find you and more about the work that you do.
Okay, so you can find me across the board, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok under Amoya Shante. And for work I'm doing, the main thing that I am really inviting people into is my love manifestation program called Amore, where you get to learn how to become the love of your own life. You get to become the one so you can attract the one. So you can attract aligned love, a relationship of your dreams, and live a pleasure-filled soft life. We're soft lifing it over here. We don't do hard anymore. We leave that on the wayside. So yeah, that is where you can find me. Pretty easy. Amoya Shante everywhere, and that is my only offer right now. And I'm really loving that.
I love it. Okay, you heard her, everyone. You know exactly where to find her everywhere. We appreciate you being here. There are not many people like you. You're inspiring other people to just be like, nope, not doing it. And I think that's very hilarious. Like wherever you go, there you are, whether that's a good or a bad thing. And sometimes a change of pace can help you improve the situation.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, everyone, thank you so much for listening to and watching Mompreneurs. As a reminder, a brand new episode goes live each Monday on Urban One Podcast Network, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Visit urban1podcast.com to learn more. That's urban1podcast.com.
Mompreneurs is brought to you by the Urban One Podcast Network and MadameNoire. Created, produced, and hosted by me, Nancy Wren. Executive produced by Sarita Wesley, Allison McGovna, and Tanya Hoffler-Moore. Produced and edited by Jiminique Miller.